Welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Carissa DeLay, and this is my co-host.
Jamie Vendera, behaving.
Behaving, yes. This is take 3.
We shall not discuss take 2.
Yes. Well, take 1 was really cool because we got to pre-test what we're going to record next week with editor Rich Daglish, and that's exciting. Yes.
Yes, love Rich. What an amazing editor.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear some of his answers to the questions we ask him and stuff. But this week we're talking children's books, plural.
Books, bookies, whatever.
Books. Yeah.
No bookies.
Yeah. All right. So this is kind of cool because this is like a duplication of talents, because you not only have to write in certain aspects, your writing isn't as weighted, and then you have to add in illustrations typically with most children's books, unless you get into like the middle age, bracket, or the young adult, which young adult for me I don't think of that as a children's book.
Yeah, not really, because I mean, I think of Harry Potter and stuff like that, or even a lot of Anne McGee's books are YA. Some of the stuff I write, like the Spitfire books are YA. But we're talking overall, the illustrated books. You said something earlier before this. You're like graphic novels, and I thought, these are graphic novels for kids.
Yeah, and so this is something when you're doing children's books, you have to be age specific as far as what your audience. We've always talked about in previous episodes about knowing your audience. This is key to know what age bracket you're trying to target, because if you're doing ages 0 to 3, you're not going to have a paper book that they can tear and chew off. You need a harder board book. So for that, you're going to need to understand there's less words, more pictures, and heavier stock.
Yeah, I love my grandson, he's 11 now, but I remember Brown Bear. I don't know if you remember that book, or they had the caterpillar that you could the toy you could turn into a butterfly, and they had a series of books on those. Little square book, hard cardboard, maybe 10 pages or so. And it was really simple pictures. And see, now I wish I would have grabbed one and showed it to you. And I had a ton of them in the other room.
And that's an interesting topic, seeing that bears are kind of like a hot topic right now.
Really?
Yes. Have you not seen on social media, like, we'll talk about that later, but bears, and whether a woman would rather be in the woods with a bear
or a man.
Yeah.
I'm too
busy.
That's
a whole nother.
I'm too busy working on Age of the Sigil, the 4th book. Yes, finally.
It's about daggone time. But, all right. So something that I have in here about age-specific books. I did break this down a little bit here. Where did it go?
Let me scroll through my notes you put in there.
Yes, I'll got perfect notes for you. All right, so board books, which I was talking about, are kind of like 0 to 3, and some people like 0. Well,
it could be 6 months, and you're trying to stimulate their brain with colors and pictures.
Yeah. And that's the thing. These so when you're doing children's books, whether I would say, especially, beginning books to picture books or early readers, you have to spell things correctly. I'm terrible at spelling. I'm awful at spelling. So I'm not going to do children's books. I'm not teaching children.
I'm actually great at spelling. I'm just terrible at typing.
Or text to touch.
Well, listen to me. I mean, what do you expect?
Talk to text is what I'm trying to say. Yes. Making sure the images aren't too busy. That would be something to consider when you're illustrating. Making sure that the illustrations go with whatever words you're putting in. Typically, the guideline for kitties. My kitties are trying to literally be in my window right now.
If you have a guideline for no kitties, I need to know it so I can fan out.
Yeah, stop letting them in. You keep letting them in.
The new one showed up yesterday.
Why am I not
and
surprised?
And it let me pet it. So
okay, we talked about this in the public domain episode. You just need to write millions of cats.
Yes. All right.
Okay. Back to the subject at hand here. Make sure no loose pieces. You see those books where they have like the interactive stuff, like the touching and things. Make sure that's in there very good. There's all these little things you have to consider. It's not just like write a children's book and put it out. you have to consider what your age genre is. So illustrations, smaller pieces, things like that. But there is a guideline. Typically, board books, which are those under 3 books, are about 15 pages, I think. I think they're about
Yeah, they're pretty small.
they're pretty small. They're mostly images. That's the illustration is more weighted than the words in books like that
Now, I
because you're
mean, you researched this, so I don't know. You correct me, but at that age, what about gender topic? Is that as important, or is that little later on, like 4 to 10 or whatever?
Yeah, that's a little later when it comes to like because when you're doing the smaller ones, those are basics like apples and like flowers. You're learning conceptual things to
Conceptuals.
conceptuals.
Yeah. Bond, James Bond.
James Bond.
Bond, conceptual.
Yeah, so they're more basic images. You for brain development wise, you don't want to have something that's super busy because the eye's not going to catch all that. So you want bigger, bolder, basic stuff when you see more children's books like that. So keep that in mind that you're not going to.
Yeah, I think we got a couple here for him. It would be like it was pictures of different animals, and like you would have a lion and it would be some fur they could rub, and the next one was an elephant and it was like gray leather, and then there was one with a bird, an ostrich, and it had little feathers on the page so they could touch it and feel it and relate it to that animal.
Yeah, and that even goes forward with the font choices, using larger font choices for the words that you're putting in there because and then you can it's almost like you start big and you build down more complicated when it comes to the children's books, because when you get into like the picture books, this is still relying on images, but you're allowed to put in more words for picture books. There's more like see Dick run, see Jane, those types of books where it was very basic sentences instead of just one word. You're getting the storyline, you're creating characters in this, but it's still very, very simple. And it's a little easier to turn. You know what I mean? So they're a heavier weighted paper versus a cardstock board, like a picture, like the first board books. Board books are more of like you're turning a page board.
Yeah, and I kind of remember that. I remember living in Alabama, and maybe it was 2nd or 3rd grade, and reading Adventures of Dick and Jane, and it was like that square book. It did have that heavy paper. It was colorful. It was a little more busy. Like you could see like a pail of water or whatever, and a hill, and this and that. So, where like you said with the baby books, it's just the apple, the elephant. So,
right.
And I mean, so if you're planning a children's book, the first thing I would do is conceptualize what your topic is about. Whether it's for that age group or older, you need to have a vision before you even start doing this, because you'll need to, you said earlier, like storyboarding. You'll have to storyboard it to make sure it's plain and simple, but gets the point across.
Yeah, I remember when my girls were little, there was a book, and it was an alphabet book, but the alphabet was rhyming, so the whole process had a rhythm. So that's another key factor when you're writing it in a picture book. Are you going to make it rhyme? Are you going to make it like a poetry type situation? Like, what are you doing to go through the whole thing? Does that make?
No, it definitely makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, and then so like I said, like it's going to be more turnable because the kids are going to be able to turn. Then they're less likely to eat the pages, so it's going to be a little heavier, almost like a coffee table book where you've got photos.
Did you just say they're less likely to eat the pages?
Yes. I mean, babies eat everything, they're like puppies.
This is true.
So I'm thinking that they're less likely to eat the card, like they could chew, like a baby could chew on a board book and it's just going to soften and eventually.
No, I remember that with him holding two.
Yeah.
Teething.
Yeah. So that when you're publishing, you got to consider that it's going to be, more like that.
Ooh, we need to write a children's book that has a little teether in the corners, just built into the book.
Oh, there you go. A teether book. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go. That's going to be our big Vendera publishing book. We're going to co-write that one, Carissa.
Yes. I can't imagine we could do a children's book called The Adventures of JDHD. Comes with its own water bottle.
I bet you already have a picture.
I do.
Character.
I do. Yeah, I sent that to you. I think I'm going to post it, or at this point, by the time this episode airs, I would have posted it so people can see this character. So yeah. Um, let's see here. I have notes. Do you what you got anything to add? Any storylines
I
that you?
mean, the only thing is, as you do get a little older, I've seen this. Like, are you writing for a gender when you're past a baby book? Because there may be a book for your girls talking, and it's kind of tied in like a need, like boys with baseball. I'm not saying girls can't play baseball, but a lot of times as a kid, that's what I'd see. Like, oh, the boys are playing in the dirt, and the girls, they're
I
out.
played in the dirt. I collected bugs. I got my fingers dirty. My husband, no. See, my husband would need the girls' book then if you're going that way because he doesn't like to get his hands dirty. I don't care to get dirt under my fingernails and go collect a salamander.
But you know what I'm talking about. They do have the gender, even ethnicity. I
Mhm.
see, and like even when I write, of course, this is why I like to have ethnicity, like order of five. We have a wide variety of characters in there because I want it to speak to everybody. So,
Mhm.
there's things when you're writing, who are you trying to speak to? Of course, overall, you
Mhm.
want to speak to all children, but is there a
Yeah.
specific message you're trying to get across?
Yeah, I
To
think the gender one is a very, very sensitive topic because I don't feel like, I mean, you do what you want,
yeah, a
but
lot has changed in this
you can't
point.
pigeonhole that. You can't pigeonhole that, like, especially with when the developing mind to make children think that only this book is for them. I probably
Yeah,
wouldn't do
well,
that.
no, I don't mean it like that, but like if like I wrote Ages or I wrote Spitfire, and it's for both boys and girls, but the main character is a boy. So if you're a female
Right,
writer, like I want the main character to be a girl. There's not enough books with
right.
girls. Pippi
Female.
Longstocking was out years ago, and I haven't seen.
I love that.
Yes, and I love those movies as well, and the books. I
Mhm,
read all the books. But like, hey, I need a new female red-haired character to speak to red-haired girls who
mhm.
who are like, I wish I had brown hair, to show them like, no, your hair is beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. So
Mhm.
looking at like, what is your message? What are you trying to get
Would
across?
that be ginger identity?
Could be.
I actually didn't even realize that even in Ireland they call them gingers.
Really?
Yeah, I was listening to I think it was something my husband was watching with Conan O'Brien, and they were talking about gingers. And I because he went over there and that's completely off topic, but still I was like, oh, they call them gingers over there. That's interesting. But anyways, so we talked. So the illustrations is a key factor in children's books. You can have a great storyline that you're creating for your young readers, your early readers, but if the illustrations aren't on point, it may like I don't like because I remember as a kid being a visual person, certain books I have no idea what the story was about. Literally no idea. So some of my favorite books were just the pictures. So I personally would pay attention to the visual aspect of the book in a children's book to make sure it grabs kids and like, oh, I want the book. How many kids like know that? Oh, kids aren't going to read the back of the book and be like, oh, I want to read this.
Exactly. Even I remember being like 6 or 7 and getting into
Mm-hmm.
comic books. I remember having this comic about the Submariner, and my reading wasn't that great at that time, but I didn't care. It was like the pictures led me through the story, so I really kind of knew what it was about because they pulled me in. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to capture their attention with the pictures first at that age, and then of course keep the words easy, to lead them in. But if they have that short attention, or they're reading through, at least they know as they get to the end, they're like, oh, I see what's happening. Submariner,
Mm-hmm.
he's fighting this other guy, and blah blah blah, and he wins in the end. And I can
Well,
explain the comic book without saying, oh, this is what I read.
yeah. And that's where it's kind of like, so that 3 to 6 year old and 6 to like, middle school age in there, you're starting to increase the themes. You're creating like larger character development. You could start out with smaller character development. Like there's an author that is local that is a children's book author. She wrote a book about her daughter. Maybe once I get to talk to her a little bit more, maybe she can come on and talk about her experience of writing a children's book. She self-published this one, and it's about her daughter and her messy room. And she would like to add more. She would like to add more books to this and like put it in different. So every time this kid's like cleaning a book or cleaning her room, her imagination wanders and takes her to these places. So it's a very cute concept, and I went through it a little bit, and for me, I was like, it's just catchy, it's just catchy. It's a kid's book. It's not an adult book. Like, you have to think of a kid's mind, like what's going to bring the kids in. You have to feel like mostly images, and then the theme of the story. What are you trying to? Don't confuse kids. Don't make it so complicated. Like, I don't know what this book is about. I just know the pictures are good. But you can
Yeah.
kind of put an underlying theme in there to teach them something.
I mean, as soon as you said that, and of course that's a little different. Actually, it sounds more fun to what I'm thinking. But I remember, and I don't know what the books were, but going to the library really young, and there would be books like there would be a moral in the book, like don't forget to feed your fish, or you gotta clean your room, or you gotta eat your peas. So I know a lot of children's authors will do that to help kids come along and like, oh yeah, I need to eat my vegetables or something. But
Yeah.
her book sounds really cool, like if she's going on all these adventures, like she throws maybe her blanket off her bed and then it lands on her and she's like suddenly in a jungle. I can see things like that.
Yeah. So she has a great concept. I think she wants to republish it. Maybe we can help her with that down the road and like kind of clean it up, like bring it in a little bit so she can kind of push more out, because I think her concept is pretty cool for the theme that she has going on. But
awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, you're like we said, themes and topics are more relevant and relatable to kids in that age and mindset, what kids are dealing with, friendships, family, broken families that we feel like, some people, there's so many different, like, and it's not even broken. I think the word broken kind of needs to be nixed anyways, because some families are not technically broken. They're more healed when they separate, if that makes sense.
Bullying.
Imagination. Go ahead.
Bullying. I mean,
bullying.
A lot of things that, that we can cover to help kids deal with these emotions at such a young age.
Mm-hmm. Life lessons, or even basic science things. Kids, once they get to chemistry or biology, it's new to them. They didn't go over it previously, but learning little things, basic. So we've talked about this very briefly and early on in the episodes, that the first time someone hears something, they retain maybe like 2%. Second time, like 8%. Third time, maybe even 60%. Each time you hear something, each time you see something, it can be my thing here.
A blue card.
It could be more retainable. But yeah. So for kids that see things multiple times, it's going to be like, by the time I get there, I'm like, oh, I can remember this. This is easy. It's like learning a new language.
Could you imagine if, I just wish, I feel like kids don't read enough. I was consumed by it. And honestly, what you're talking about, if there had been really fun books about chemistry or algebra basics or something, your mind's developing, you can learn this stuff at a young age. And if you were just introduced to it, by the time you get to high school, you're like, I remember a lot of this. It's so easy instead of struggling.
Think about cartoons like Dora. We know certain words in Spanish because of Dora. Like, it's the same idea with books. Something that my middle schooler told me just yesterday was, I don't like to read because of the school making me read. That's not why this kid loves to read, and she's like kind of in a mode where she's like, I need a new book.
Yep.
And she wants the prequel to the books that she was just reading, but I haven't had a chance to go to Books A Million and go grab it. But that's the thing. She doesn't like to read because of that. She hated reading in that time frame because she was being made to read certain books. So one of the things when they were younger was I wanted them to read. So, we had the reading and stuff like that. So finding these different books for them to go through, and we would constantly look at these books, like, what book do you want? And we go over a book at night. And it wasn't every night, because I'm not that parent that's like, oh, it's time to read. I was terrible at doing the constant read, but there would be several nights that either myself or my husband, we would read the books to our girls, or they'd bring us a book and we'd read it. and go through it.
No, I got to agree with your daughter too, because I remember maybe it was the Iliad. There were several books we read in school. Absolutely hated it because you were forcing me to read it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
by that time, I was already reading Terry Brooks, and sort of Shannon was like 700 pages long. And I discovered that when I was 12. So by the time I'm in high school and they're forcing me to read that stuff, in my freshman year, it drove me nuts. My
Mm-hmm.
sophomore year, I had an English teacher, and she let us choose our books. So it wasn't like the whole group was going to read the same book. It's
Right.
like, what interests you? And you're going to write a
Mm-hmm.
book report on it, but I only want you to read what you want to read.
Mm-hmm.
So I read
Yeah.
W.C. Fields. I read a biography about him. Why, I don't know, but I loved it.
Well, and that's a good point there that you just made about like being able to choose more options. So when you're writing a children's book, the marketing aspect is a little different. You're going to have to collaborate with schools and libraries to kind of create a partnership. You got to be a little bit more active to get your book out to kids. But a lot of times, and in Ohio, I don't know what it is in Florida because my kids are not in that developmental stage of reading. They're like past that. So in Ohio, there was a database that you could enter your book into. And so one of the teachers, she's like, you need to get your Crystal Gate and Four Rivers onto these lists because they're considered young adult. So when middle schoolers have books to choose from, these books can be okayed by the system to be on that list and they could choose that book. So you've got to work and collaborate with those systems to be able to get your book on the list. It's not like
Now
yeah.
it's also nationwide, and it's JDHD kicking in. The name just slipped me. We will do a podcast just on
Mhm.
this to help people get
Oh
the
yeah,
book
that's
system.
we
So
and I think
libraries can order it, and then they.
and I will reach out to one of the teachers that was a part of that, and she can maybe give us some insight how that system works.
Or we can have a podcast.
That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna see if we can get
Okay.
her on there. Yeah. Yeah, so there is a database that kids can choose from that are approved through school systems. But Florida's different. Florida kind of stands on its own with its rules and regulations. So I'm not sure if that's how they do that. But even being promoted through like the book fairs and like little events and stuff where kids might even be able to get hands on your books. So, or versus novels are a completely different marketing range. It's a little bit more broader. So
a couple things I just want to touch on really quick. Because like I said, in the summers I used to go to the library and just read. And if I got into a book, like there was these, I can't even remember the series. It was like a young James Bond type series. There was a bunch of them. But if I didn't get pulled in the first, half of the first chapter, I tossed it aside. So for me, at that age, it had to be strong. It had to like what's next? So it always, I either had to be really sad. It's like something like my dog died, or like they're hanging on a tightrope, or you're laughing. There's something that just really stirs your emotions. Then I would be hooked. So I need something to grab me right out the gate to make that children's book pop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, like kind of like the rhyming thing. Kids like to rhyme. So if your book's rhyming or something, you know what I mean? Kids aren't going to read like this children's book author I was talking about. Kids aren't going to read a book like you need to clean your room. No, she's basically giving the cleaning the room thing or the messy part of it, but taking this wild imagination from a kid's point of view, like what happens and how they get distracted type thing.
Yeah, I also like books that are relatable to me. Like I have a skin disease, and so it's kind of shy. So if there was a character who maybe he broke his leg and he was on crutches, or he was really shy and nobody sat with him in the lunchroom, and I could connect to that, that pulled me in too. So I always wanted.
Were you the shy kid that sat by yourself in the lunchroom?
I mean, no, not really. That's not. I mean, I was shy. I didn't always sit by myself. I didn't talk a lot in lunchroom. I just eat and get out of there. So
I talk way too much.
I'm making up for it now. I talk too much now.
Yeah, I was one of the kid that had great student talks too much. It pays from it. It pays off now. So, all right, publishing. Publishing a children's book is a little different because there are specific publishers for children's books. You got to be careful. Not every publisher is a board book. Not everybody is a picture book. Not everybody is a young early reader publisher. So there are more publishers and agents and editors who specialize in children's literature. So that's a little different. And so you need to understand the needs and preferences of your young readers to know what kind of editor, what kind of agent, what kind of publishing house that you need to go to. I did look up some of the top ones that were listed that are a little bit more well known. There are a lot out there, but like Chelsea Publishers, Penguin Random House, Harper Collins Children's Books, Hatchet Children's Group, let's see here, Candlewick Press. These are some of the ones I was going through and seeing. Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. So there's several out there that are like the bigger traditional ones. But I mean, obviously you can self-publish. I've seen several self-published children's books authors, so I don't know.
I haven't seen them physically.
I
Because
have.
I haven't. Now you bring up a question because now I wonder. Like we use Lightning Source. We've been with Lightning Source for 20 years, and I'm not even for sure they do that. But a lot of people are just, even with children's books, not saying this is right, you're going to go, but if you're an indie publisher, you may just be doing PDF, ebook, and Kindle, Nook, stuff like that. So you can still make money and get your book out there. Of course, it'd be a little harder if a library wants to pick it up, or they want to mass read it in a school, or have it in like pre-kindergarten and like that. So you really have to think, if I'm going to be an indie author, where would print this book?
Yes. Okay. I'm looking on here. We've talked about this previously in an episode about some of our favorite books and stuff, but before we close out, what is something that you feel like as a kid you can remember your favorite little, or like you don't maybe remember the book, but do you remember sitting there and like looking at books when you were little?
Oh yeah, not so much the children's books. I don't really remember that, except for being 6 and reading the Submariner comic and a couple others like Daredevil and stuff. But
but before you could read, though, before reading, what do you remember prior to reading?
I can't think of anything.
Yeah? I
had a Messy Bessie and Sailor Sam doll. That's the only thing that came to me. And I think there was you're too young for this. There's these 2 dress-up dolls you could have, a boy and a girl, and I'm pretty sure there was like a baby book with pictures. I can remember, but I don't really remember seeing, but I do remember that. Sesame Street. See, now you make me think. I had a Big Bird doll. My mom's, I loved it so much it was dirty, and she threw it in a washer and dryer and destroyed it. And that was the day part of my soul was ripped out of my body, and it's never recovered. But I do remember her having
little animosity there.
Sorry, Mom. I'm just telling you. But I do remember Sesame Street books now because I love them because they're colorful.
Yeah, wasn't that the gold? What is the little gold?
Oh my gosh! Yes.
What is that gold metal?
Yes.
What is that?
It's like on the spine.
Yes, I love those books.
Yep.
There was a Grover one. Sesame Street had tons of those.
Yep.
There were a lot of the princesses ones. They had a lot of those. Had so many stories.
Wow, I can't believe you pulled that memory out of me. Yes, I do remember.
You're welcome. Yeah. And that's another. They have the Elmo. Remember the Elmo and the Potty one? Those are like newer ones now. Yeah. But yeah, I remember the Grover one. That was my favorite one to read to Sky when she was growing up, was the monster at the end of this book. Grover was so scared about the monster at the end of the book. So it's like every page, please don't turn the page. And you're like, I'm turning the page, Grover. And like, you're not listening to Grover. He's warning you. There's a monster at the end of this book. And it turns out that Grover's the monster. Oops, sorry, plot twist. Didn't mean to spoil it.
You ruined it for me. Why didn't you put up a spoiler alert?
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, and that's another thing. Like, how is your book going to be cased? So a lot of times when you see fold over things, they're stapled together, but like there is literally the little thin binding that they can put out. Sometimes your local school system can even do print things for you. If you're working with a school system to create maybe a localized book for your school kids. Maybe there's something you could do like, hey, in collaboration, how much it's going to cost. Some school systems have printing systems. I know we did that for the volleyball, and the quality is kind of like a children's book, not the board book, but like the picture book. So it's a heavier stock paper that's printed on, and there's no staples that are going to come out and get into the kids. It's like it's a binded book essentially. So
That's cool.
yes. Yeah, I like this idea of maybe adding a children's book to our repertoire.
I do too.
Yeah. All right. So
The Advance versus JDHD.
yeah. Oh yes. We shall start up a storyboard. Yes, I will. Yeah, I'm speaking futuristically, but I've already posted that picture of Jamie as the JDHD character. Be interested to see what people think about that. All right.
I'm excited.
As always. All right. We're going to close out and let you know that if you'd like to follow us and find other ways to find us, you can go to alwaysrightpodcast.com. Click on any of those icons there that we have listed to find out how to listen to us, where to follow us, because we really appreciate that and love you for it. And then also, if you have questions or comments, you can either put those comments in the show that you're listening to, or you can email us directly at alwaysrightpodcast@gmail.com, and we will return you an email, or we might put your comments on there. Speaking of that, something that would be really cool, I would love for our listeners to do, and I would like to start this series. I haven't really said this to you, but forever lines that stuck with you when you were reading a book. That would be something cool. Like, these are the forever lines that our listeners have listened to or that have heard over time being read to, or they've read it. Share those with us, because I'd be like, oh, this one just stuck with me. Like, a lot of times for Twilight, people do the, this is the skin of a killer. That is like kind of like a hashtag. So what are some of your forever lines? Send those our way. Tell us what those are, because I would like to share those every once in a while on our.
That would be cool.
Yeah. All right. So until next time, thank you for listening. This is
Jamie Bandera.
And I am author Carissa DeLay.
I should have said JDHD.
Yes. And as always, we want you to always write.